All right, guys, happy Monday. And it looks like people are listening to our private conversations again. I'm just talking to you guys like you're my cousins and my friends. And then I look up and the media is very, very mad at me all the time. And I got to tell you, it is getting more intense out there. I think actually it's even going international. Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, I'm pretty sure him and his husband, Brigitte, are going to come for my life because check out this headline all the way from France. Brigitte Macron. La rumeur qui inquiétait l'Élysée. I don't know if I said that good, guys, but what it means, what it translates to is the rumor that worries Élysée. So they are concerned about something, and I can tell you what that something is. All that and more coming up on Candace. All right, guys, so we are talking a lot about psychology lately, and that's making the media pretty angry because they are a part of this sort of psychological simulation. So I'm going to tell you a true story, and it is wild. And I know that if you are reading the book Chaos that I have been basically saying is required reading at this point, if you're going to listen to this podcast, then you know that our CIA has been up to no good for a very long time. Scary stuff. It's actually a very tough, scary read because you have to come to terms with the fact that our government is evil. Our government has done tremendously evil things. They will continue to do that until we wake up. So true story, the CIA back in the day did this experiment where they placed 18 people in a room. 17 of those people were actually CIA agents, and one of them was just an unwitting member of the public. So imagine they pick you, you think that you're going into a room with 17 other people who are from the street just like you, but in reality, those 17 other people are agents and they are conducting an experiment on you. So the person that was running the experiment showed every single person in the room a picture of a triangle. It was very clearly a picture of a triangle, and he asked every person in the room to simply state what they saw on the picture. Well, despite it clearly being a triangle, all of the agents were instructed to say square. So imagine you're in this room with 17 other people, you think that you're all off the side of the street, and they start going around, and everyone says, oh, what is that? A square, a square. What do you see? A square, a square, a square, a square. Well, by the time it gets to you, and you're the 18th person, you're going, oh, am I crazy? I see a triangle. And guess what that 18th person said? Well, they said square, because they didn't want to be the crazy person in the room. Really think about the implications of that experiment. That is exactly how the media works. They are the agents in the room that are repeating square, 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 until you're supposed to just completely abandon reason and just join them and say, totally, that's a square. That's what I see too, even though you know that's completely not true. And the reality is the majority of people do this today because you don't want to think that you're crazy. When you look back at COVID and you see everybody wearing the masks and 6 feet social distancing and all of this stuff that was so clearly absurd, people fell in line because they just thought, I don't want to be the crazy person. I don't want to be the anti-vaxxer. I don't want to be called insane. I can't think of a greater modern example going on right now of that experiment than the Brigitte Macron story. It is an absurdity. There is an overwhelming amount of evidence. And Emmanuel Macron is married to a biological male. I know that sounds crazy. And it sounds crazy especially because the mockingbirds in media are just refusing to debunk it. Instead, they're just trying to tell you that, yep, well, you guessed it, it's a square. Well, it's obviously a woman. Don't ask any more questions. Yeah, jogging your memory to Piers Morgan last week, trying to make me say that it was a square. Take a listen. Why don't you go pursue a primary source? Why don't you go find the articles that were written by the French journalists? Because this did not come from me. This came from French journalists.
And while they were working,
let me finish a statement, Piers. Okay. While they were working on this piece, the Macrons sent their secret service to interrupt this. This is not a normal thing that you do when somebody's about to publish a lie. You would just say it's ridiculous, publish it, and we'll dispute it. They sent the secret service to intimidate these journalists. They took their phones. They held them. They wanted to know everyone who was working on the piece. And what they uncovered was absolutely fascinating. What he's trying to tell you, this is crazy. This is wacky. Why don't you just go pursue a primary source?
Well, I
Because
don't
I'm
need
not the
to.
primary source. It would be very easy to dispute this. All Brigitte Macron would have to do is produce a single photo of her in the first 30 years of her life, or to
Yeah.
go on a little walk with
Actually,
her brother, who she alleges that she is not. So that's incredible. He's saying, no, I haven't even looked at the story. I have not pursued a primary source because that's not the task of a mockingbird. He is supposed to just say what the state wants the public to think. And in this case, they just want you to think that it's crazy. Hence, Bari Weiss, formerly of the New York Times, when she tweeted a celebratory tweet about me being fired from the Daily Wire, she actually wrote an entire article. And she tweeted this. Take a look. It says, and this piece doesn't even touch on her truly bat views about Brigitte Macron. That it took the Daily Wire its longest ever ties with Candace Owens is alarming. Oh, there goes another one of the words. This is alarming. This is truly bat insane. Again, psychological. That's just her trying to say to the public, don't even look at that. That is so crazy that I couldn't even take the time to simply debunk it. And it's a very easy thing to debunk. This is the job of the mainstream media. And this is something that you are going to have to tether yourself to. You're going to have to tether yourself to the reality that they are constantly making psychological gains by trying to convince you that crazy is sane and sane is crazy. So let me tell you about this Brigitte Macron story and how I came across it, because like I told Piers Morgan, no, of course, this did not come from me. Why would I just be sitting around as an American citizen being like, I wonder if I could look into a French conspiracy theory? Of course not. I was actually just reading the Daily Mail one day, and I saw a headline about how Emmanuel Macron was absolutely furious about these rumors. And I was like, what rumors? I haven't even heard about anything. And then I stumbled upon quite a pretty big situation that has been going on in France, in that it has gotten so big that, yes, Macron has been tasked now with going out to the public and trying to dissuade them from believing that his wife, Brigitte Macron, was actually born a man. Now, of course, when I saw the headline, I agreed. I was like, yeah, that is absolutely insane. Let me read this article real quick. And the article stipulated that there was a theory. And immediately, in reading the article, my mockingbird senses came on. I realized that the article itself was also not debunking anything, and this should be a very easy thing to debunk. Rather, they were just doing what Bari Weiss was doing, what Piers was doing, and just saying it was crazy. Now, in this article, they had only 2 photos embedded as proof that Brigitte Macron ever lived as a woman for the first 30 years of her life. Here are the 2 photos. I'm going to show them to you. Here's the first photo. And they basically were just like, look at cute little Brigitte Macron sitting on her mother's lap. And instantly, I promise you, I hadn't even looked into the primary source of the story. And I said, well, that's weird, because Brigitte looks to me like the person on the far left. That is Brigitte's whole face. I mean, you looking at this? I mean, if you're listening to this in a podcast, do go find it on YouTube thereafter. But I went, no, that actually, the person on the lap doesn't look anything like Brigitte. Whatever. Then I looked at photo 2 that they presented, and I went, wait, Brigitte's quite old. This does not look like a photo that is that old. This actually looks like a new photo that was just turned into black and white. Whatever, I put it in the back of my mind, I decided to go pursue the primary source, and I was shocked at what I stumbled upon. You guys, this was not some Reddit conspiracy theory. This was not some people sitting around with tinfoil hats being like, let's just make up a rumor about the First Lady of France. No, far from that. This was a story that was worked on for 3 years by journalists, which was eventually published in a 6-part series in a publication known as Faits et Documents. Xavier Poussard worked on the story, Natasha Ray worked on the story, and they crossed hands with genealogists who worked on this story. So again, no, this was not some random conspiracy theory. This was 3 years of hard work. And what they determined was that Brigitte Macron did not exist for the first 30 years of her life. Listen to what I'm saying to you. There is no proof that this human being existed for 30 years. It's a very easy thing to debunk, guys. Okay? Very easy thing to debunk. If somebody came at me and said, Candace Owens, you did not exist for the first 30 years, I'd be like, what are you Here's my high school yearbook. Here's my middle school yearbook. Here's me and the homies standing outside with too thin eyebrows because that was the style when I was in high school. Here's me, a picture of me cheerleading. Here's me when I played the flute for 6 months. Here's me and my sisters. It's such a nonsense that I would instead send out people to call it crazy without giving them 30 years worth of proof to debunk it. Let's not forget, Brigitte Macron also has 3 kids. I can show you photos of me pregnant. Oh, here's me in the hospital when we had our first child. They're not doing any of that. Instead, what they did, as you just heard me say on Piers Morgan, is they sent the Secret Service out to intimidate the journalists. Yeah, while Natasha Ray was working on the story, she was getting close. She realized that there was one woman that she should question. Well, this woman happens to still be friends with Brigitte Macron, and she alerted the Macrons to the fact that journalists were working on this story. And so the Secret Service showed up at Natasha Ray's home, detained her, intimidated her, took her phone, wanted to know who else was working on the story. This is simply not something you do when you are telling the truth. And by the way, they're still doing it. Natasha was the first victim, but not the last. There was also a journalist for a Parisian liberal establishment publication called Le Nouvel Obs, who jumped on the story because she thought this is insane. It's going to be very easy for me to debunk it. And obviously, Brigitte is in fact a woman. And guess what happened? That journalist could not debunk the story. She too was amazed at what she was discovering. And then she too was tracked down by the Secret Service. So what is this theory that the state is working so hard to protect? What is this secret, rather, that they're working so hard to protect? I'm going to tell you what it is that the journalists are alleging. And I think it's a very credible allegation. Let's get back to that first photo, okay? Their theory is that Brigitte Macron was actually born Jean-Michel Trogneau. That is the person that you are seeing in this photo here on the far left. That would make, if in fact that was Brigitte Macron, that would make her 8 years older than she is currently presenting herself to the public. They are alleging that Brigitte lived as Jean-Michel Trogneau for 30 years and then she transitioned. And I will tell you, the theory is credible for a ton of reasons. The first one being is that they were able to pull together a string of interviews where Brigitte Macron seemingly doesn't know her own age. As just one example, in one video that Natasha Ray had uncovered, Brigitte was giving an interview and she was recalling having lived alone in the United States during the moon landings in 1969. Well, that's the thing what they say, or I should say Judge Judy says this about lying. She's like, if you lie, you have to have a good memory. If you don't lie, you don't have to have a good memory. And it turns out that Brigitte perhaps does not have the best memory because she would have been 16 at that time. So for her to say that she was living alone in the United States, what was she doing at the age of 16 living alone in the United States? You're not allowed to do that. Jean-Michel, on the other hand, Jean-Michel Trogneau, who the journalists are alleging that Brigitte lived as, well, he would have been 24 years old at that time. That would make more sense. Now I'm giving you one example. There are multiple examples where they have found in interviews that it seems that Brigitte just does not know her own age. Of course, you're probably thinking rationally, you're coming online, you're going, okay, well, where's Jean-Michel? Brigitte alleges that that's her older brother. Well, guess what, guys? He's missing. The genealogists basically looked through, your entire life, obviously. You're creating data everywhere when you're getting married and when you're going to get IDs. The genealogists can trace you existing. So what they determined was that for 30 years, her brother, Jean-Michel Trogneau, existed. They found tons of evidence that this individual existed. And then right at the same time that Brigitte Macron suddenly comes into the public sphere, Jean-Michel goes missing. Now you have Brigitte and her brother is missing. And you know what, guys? You would think, why don't you just go on a walk with your brother? If this is the rumor that is driving you crazy, why don't you just walk out with your brother and do a press conference and be like, hey, conspiracy theories are bad, okay? They are very stressful and they are hurtful to my family. Here is my brother, Jean-Michel Trogneau. No, they can't do that. He's just simply missing, guys. And you're crazy to even ask for her to simply show where her brother's been since she was magically born into the public sphere at the age of 30. Now let's go back to that second photo that I showed you that the Daily Mail had embedded into their article. The one that I just instantly, without even having looked into the story, said, that looks too new. I mean, Brigitte's pretty old, no matter which way you slice it. Well, they were able to determine that that's actually a recolorized photo of her daughter, Tefon. I'm going to show you a side-by-side here. It is very obviously Tefon. So you're telling me the media gets onto the story, and as a way to debunk it, you accidentally present a photo of your daughter and recolorize it into black and white? Again, you guys, this is not normal. The press doesn't even pretend that that is Brigitte anymore, by the way. They're like, oh, that was just a mistake. Oh, yeah, that's Tefon. So you're probably wondering, okay, but Candace, Brigitte has kids, 3 kids. How is that possible? Well, you already know how that's possible, you guys. We live in the age of transgenderism. Caitlyn Jenner is a transgendered individual who has fathered children, and that is what they are alleging Brigitte did, that Brigitte at first fathered her 3 children and then transitioned into a woman. And this theory is further backed up by photos. When I tell you they were this in-depth, and the journalists and then the larger French public all got involved in trying to figure out who, in fact, Brigitte was for the first 30 years of her existence. They even found a series of photos of when Brigitte was a teacher. And she chose to bizarrely cover her neck with a scarf for virtually an entire year. And they're like, this is the exact time that Brigitte got the Adam's apple surgery. It is that detailed. You absolutely must look into this story. Even if you can't wrap your head around the fact that the state could lie like this, that Emmanuel Macron could lie like this, that they could continue to gaslight the French public like this. Well, there's some other things that should have immediately let you know that something is not right in this relationship. How about the story of how they got together? Like I said on Piers Morgan, at best, you are looking at a scenario where Brigitte Macron is a pervert. The story in how they got together is that Brigitte alleges that she was a teacher and Macron was this 14, 15-year-old student that she was attracted to. What? Yeah, and they just struck up a relationship. She says at the time that she was married with 3 kids and made the decision to divorce and leave her husband for a 14-year-old boy. Does that register to you as a normal situation? And then guess what, guys? You're gonna find this to be insane. But then you would go, okay, well, let's just talk to Brigitte's ex-husband. Yeah, well, when Emmanuel Macron won the election, some journalists around the world were trying to track down the now First Lady's ex-husband, and they couldn't find him. Nope, without a trace. Could not find this man anywhere. They were like, hey, yeah, where's your ex-husband? And they kept going, oh, no, he's extremely private. He's extremely private. And then one day, Tefon, Brigitte's daughter, just randomly announces, as journalists began going, this is really weird. Where is your dad? That he died and they chose to cremate him in a private ceremony. Don't ask any questions. Yep, dead. Can't find a trace of him. Can't find proof that he ever existed, but he's now dead and don't ask any questions. You guys, this is just, well, to put it like Barry Weiss, bat insane. It's so easy for someone to just produce a shred of evidence that this individual existed for the first 30 years of her life. Don't let them make you think that you're the crazy one, okay? It's a triangle, my friends. It is not a square. You know, the lesson in all of this is that the state, through decades of psychological research, institutes that were dedicated to seeing how us, the public, the general public, would respond to certain things, they were able to determine that you are much more likely to believe a big lie rather than a small one. Because your brain just goes, oh, there's no way this could be a lie. It's so big. It's like when you hear those stories and you're like, how did this woman not know that her husband had an entire family? Well, because you would think you're crazy to believe that your husband was traveling and started an entire family. The lie is so big that you're actually not likely to believe it. So when the state lies, they lie big. And you've got to be willing to be the person in the room. You got to be willing to be like me, because I'm telling you, if the CIA had me in that room, I would be like, are you guys crazy? It's a freaking triangle. You guys need to get your heads checked. Why are you all saying square? You got to be bold like that, you guys. Trust your gut. Your gut is God-given. And on that note, you guys, I am very excited for the summer because I am making sure that I continue to stay consistent in my routines, especially my prayer routines. A great way for me to do that is with Hallow, my favorite prayer app. It is the #1 Catholic app in the world, and it is an amazing app for any Christian that is looking to dive deeper into their prayer life. And let me tell you, everyone needs to start praying because these are some scary times. Hallow has thousands of prayers, meditations, and music, including new contemplative and contemporary Christian radio that I can listen to anywhere, anytime. This summer, Hallow has a number of powerful prayer challenges and a scripture series that's coming up with biblical scholar Jeff Cavins, Jonathan Rumi from The Chosen, and even Jim Caviezel from The Sound of Freedom and Passion of the Christ. So do not abandon your prayer habits this summer. Maintain your peace and deepen your relationship with God on Hallow. Download Hallow for 3 months for free at hallow.com/Candace. All right, guys, now I can't believe we're already almost at the end of the show, but I really had to redo that Brigitte Macron thing because people were telling me that they could not find the old episode. I was like, it's okay, we'll recreate it. But we're going to jump right into some of your comments. Before we do that, I want to remind you, if you have not yet, to subscribe to this channel. We are just talking about everything, getting you guys ready and prepared to deal with the layers of insanity that are coming out of the government right now. We're tremendously grateful that we are #3 overall on Spotify. We are also #5 overall on Apple Podcasts, which means we are doing it. We are completely free and we are doing it. And I could not have done this without your guys' support. Now, before we get into comments, I wanted to say overall on Friday, obviously we aired the conversation with Brianna Joy Gray. And people were upset about it. Well, some people were grateful for it. Of course, there were other people that were really angry that we were coming together. Her and I disagree on basically everything other than the right that people should be able to criticize foreign governments. So it was really amazing to see that. And it kind of got me into thinking about how much we are conditioned to constantly hate other human beings, right? That is actually, I think it's a famous quote from Aldous Huxley where he says that the entire point of propaganda is to convince one group of human beings that the other group of human beings are not in fact human beings. And so people, I think, were very angry and challenged by the discussion that I was having with Brianna because we were both just coming from it with a human aspect of realizing that what war breeds, the amount of death that it breeds, the amount of children that are harmed because of it, the amount of children that are then thrown into foster care because of it. I mean, these are things that we don't consider in the moment and which we should. On the topic of foster care, I want to let you guys know, and I'm sure that you have seen this because there are a lot of people that are speaking about it. Angel Studios is soon going to release a new movie that is entitled Sound of Hope. They sent me the movie to watch, and wow. It tells the story of a town in Texas called Possum Trot, and it will be releasing in theaters on July 4th. And essentially, what was in this movie is something that I think a lot of us struggle to think about because it's such a heavy topic. When you think about foster care and you just think about the kids that are constantly moving in and out of the system, you don't feel like you are equipped to take that on. And so this town in Texas, everyone decided that they were going to take these children into foster care, eventually adopting a ton of these children until there were none left in the system. Within, I think, 100 miles of where they lived. They couldn't find a single child that was in this system. Amazingly inspiring, but also allows you to grapple with, I guess, our concerns about when you think about adoption, when you think about foster care, you realize that you are dealing with a child that obviously is going to have some issues, right? They may not be fully formed if you're adopting someone that's 15 or 16 years old. They're dealing with a lot of trauma. And I think that's probably the biggest fear that people face when they go, could I do this? Could I actually do that? Well, this movie is going to take you through all that. It's going to help you step right into that. Here are your fears, and we're going to show you that, yes, that is real, that a lot of these children are complicated and a lot of these children are traumatized, but they deserve to be loved. So I'm going to play for you guys this clip so you can take a look at it.
Are you sure these people want us?
I know they do. You can call me Mama. Oh, Lord.
If we can't wrap our arms around the most vulnerable, then what do we have? Noise! And the children can't take the noise anymore.
You get it. It's totally going to pull at your heartstrings. It's a wonderfully powerful story. The theaters are already starting to sell out all across the country. But there is an exclusive early screening in theaters everywhere, which will be taking place on June 19th, 2 weeks before the movie is officially released. And you can get your tickets now, and you should get them fast because, as I said, they are selling out. The foster crisis is the primary cause of homelessness, child trafficking, and addiction here in America. And here are the statistics. Almost 120,000 kids do not have a home. About 60% of them are child trafficking victims. 50% of all homeless people have spent time in foster care. 25% of kids who age out of the foster system end up incarcerated within 2 years. So yes, doing something like going to the theater, which by the way is a major way to change culture, waking you up to this, waking you up to the issues that are happening here in America. And this is exactly what happened, obviously, with The Sound of Freedom, another movie that Angel Studios did. That was last summer. It made people suddenly aware of a problem that many of us don't really want to face. And the outcome of that, just being aware, going to the movies, watching something that is powerful, well, eventually new laws were passed. Well, we have the exact same opportunity that sits before us today. We can change the world for these kids if we show up in force. We need 1 million fighters to join us in theaters during the week of the 4th of July for these kids who need our help. You can get tickets at angel.com/Candace to join the fight for kids. Again, that is angel.com/Candace. You'll find showtimes and you'll be able to buy tickets. Now, getting back into your comments regarding the Brianna Joy Gray episode. First and foremost, we have Chris. Chris wrote, not being able to criticize a foreign government should offend all Americans. Yes, it should. It is so weird to me that, and I think this is, of course, because of so much propaganda and so much of a fear that's been embedded inside of Jewish people from the time that they are young, that they feel that they have to identify with this nation in the Middle East, or as such, say some Jewish people, rather than recognizing you're American. When I look at a Jewish person, I don't think, oh, you are Israeli or you're attached to this nation. I think you're an American, and like me, you should be outraged if any foreign country is making an impact on speech, because there is nothing more American than free speech, the ability to criticize. You criticize our own president, of course, we should be able to criticize Bibi Netanyahu. Anybody alleging anything else is, in my view, anti-American. Tamara writes, I was fired last fall for posting a video of Candace saying, life's tough, get a helmet, man. It blows my mind how easily our lives can be torn down for sharing a thought, opinion, or support. After experiencing that, nothing surprises me anymore. Apparently, I need to update for full disclosure. The video of Candace was posted with the following phrase. If you feel threatened by a woman who's 8 months pregnant that's coming to speak at your college, definitely get a helmet because you can't handle more brain damage. One of my colleagues was offended by it, and because I had the company listed as my employer on my Facebook profile, the company had the right to, I'm assuming that says terminate. Yeah, that's horrible, but that's the world we live in now. And wow, that person who told on you, very bad karma. You don't want that karma of being the person who is so offended by someone posting something in their own private capacity that you take it up to their boss and have their entire livelihood threatened. So that's awful. Wes writes, wow, I'm a Black conservative woman and a big fan of Candace, even though I occasionally watched Brianna on The Hill. But to see them together boldly discussing issues that matter is just wow. Goes to show that when it comes to certain issues, there is no left or right. There is only right or wrong. These beautiful and intelligent women are shining examples of how to be a journalist with integrity. Bless their hearts. I can go to bed knowing that not all is doom and gloom out there. Yeah, it is nice to be able to come together with the left on certain issues. And look, I don't necessarily hold the same perspectives as Brianna on the Israel-Palestine conflict, or at least I don't know if everything that she was saying, I wasn't providing a live fact check. The reason that I wanted to have her on the show is simply because it is an outrage to think that people are losing their jobs for criticizing a foreign nation. It makes entirely no sense. And we have to lock arms on that. All Americans, doesn't matter what race you are, what ethnicity you are, what religion you are. If we lose speech in this country, there will be nothing left. Trust me. You lose speech, you lose everything. This person writes, as an Arab, I was told by a Jewish friend that I no longer have the right to identity as a Semite because it puts in danger the lives of Jews who need this label to protect them. For context, this friend is a wealthy British man, whilst I'm an Iraqi immigrant who lost my family home and family members to the American and British armies during the invasion in 2003. It is unclear to me why he needs more protection than me or other Arab Semites that remain back in Iraq and Palestine. Your friend's an idiot. I mean, that's really all I can tell you. He's an absolute idiot. To be Semitic means to speak a Semitic language. And obviously, if you're an Arab, you are Semitic. So no one gets to just take that away from you. That's an absolute nonsense. Obviously, even when you're talking about Semite, you are talking about of Shem in the Bible. Forget the history of it. If you're a descendant of Shem, obviously, if you speak a Semitic language, you are Semitic. You can't just rinse that away because you say, oh, it's no longer expedient for me that you are who you are. That's a nonsense. Lastly, over on Connect, I told you about this app. I absolutely love it. It's amazing because people can choose to text me. And I just go on my walks in the morning and I answer them with voice notes and they ask me all sorts of questions. This person wrote to me, protecting his name, obviously. Having watched your podcast for a few days now, I am convinced that these words of scripture also apply to you. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you, and before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you a prophet to the nations. That's Jeremiah 1:5. You are carrying the Catholic cause on your shoulders. You will be in my daily prayers. Remember, you are never alone. As Jesus promises, he who sent you is with you. A brother in Christ. That is such a wonderful comment. I love that. And I get so many people that are writing to me. I think mainly the 2 text messages that I get from people on the Connect app is pertaining to faith and also pertaining to me not vaccinating my children. And yes, I think what is happening right now is the mindset of people all around the world is shifting. We are starting to realize that we are of God. You know what I mean? That the state has completely gotten in the way with us having the knowledge and the wisdom that can only come from God. And they're constantly trying to convince you not to trust your gut, constantly trying to convince you that trusting your gut in and of itself is a conspiracy. Your gut is not a conspiracy. Again, your gut is the wisdom that is given to you by God. Ladies and gentlemen, that is all the time that we have for today. We'll see you tomorrow.